Barry Tramel here at the Jim Thorpe Events Center with the newest members of the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. Leon Heath and Bob Berry Jr. go in posthumously. Live with us, Joe Dial, Brian Bosworth, Jimmy Houston, and the golfer with me, Scott Verplank. And Scott, you came up from Dallas, had a great career at OSU, and you really, outside of going on the weekends to play golf, you never left. What made you decide to stay and be an Oklahoman?
Well, you know, when I went to Oklahoma State, I really fell in love with a little slower pace than Dallas, and I found out that the people in Stillwater and Oklahoma City and the whole state of Oklahoma are my kind of people, and just always felt at home here, and I've loved Oak Tree where I've lived forever, and never really had any desire to go back to Dallas or go anywhere else.
Of course, you had the fabulous career, and when you get inducted to something like this, the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, stand with people like Jimmy Houston and Brian Bosworth, how does it make you reflect on your career?
Well, very obviously, it makes me feel pretty good. I mean, I don't really consider myself anything ultra special, but it's a very nice honor to be recognized in what is now my home state as accomplishing something in the world of golf, in the game of golf. But it's just, like I said, I think it's a great pat on the back, and I appreciate it. But I think anybody could do it.
Well, you mentioned maybe the highlight of your career, winning that Byron Nelson a few years ago. Byron Nelson, one of your mentors when you were a young golfer. But I also think back to 1986 and when you won the Western Open as an amateur and the monumentalness of that achievement. Looking back almost 30 years, how did an amateur actually win a PGA Tour event?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. That in terms of history, that's the biggest. Probably the biggest thing I ever did, because winning on the tour, it hadn't been done in a long time, and is rarely done. But I think it was just honestly, it was an accumulation of what I'd been doing. With all the different variables that I deal with, I matured a lot faster because I had to, being diabetic. And I was just at 20 years old, I was a little bit ahead of everybody else at my level, and I'd been playing great, and I got a chance to play in that Western Open and really did a good job of just being myself and seeing how I do against these other guys. I'd played a couple times with the pros, but I knew I was playing well, and I knew that if I went in there and played like I'd been playing, I'll have a chance to see what happens, and sure enough, it turned out that way.
And Joe, when you were jumping 15, 16 feet back as a teenager in Marlow, did you ever think you would achieve this kind of level of fame in your home state?
I absolutely never did. I mean, I just did it for fun. Me and my dad used to go out and pole vault, and just all I wanted was another inch, and I never even realized I was doing good. And then, you get older and they ask you to be in these things. That's a real honor. 1980s,
of course, you set the world record in the pole vault. What was the thing that really got you from being a good pole vaulter to being one of the world's best?
Well, I think it takes time. I ended up jumping 18 in high school, which I'm still trying to figure out how I did that. And then the 19. But to get to the 19.6, I think it just takes time, and you just get a little stronger and a little faster.
You stayed in the sport, been coaching a long time. You've been able to impart your knowledge and impressions of the pole vault with all these guys for the last generation?
Yes, sir. I've done a lot. I do so many clinics all over, and my middle son is a pole vaulter in his first year at ORU, and he was like the fourth best in high school last year. And I traveled to Taiwan, some other countries, doing clinics for kids.
How long of a process was this in terms of pole vaulters' lifespan can be a little bit? I mean, you went pretty far as a pole vaulter.
Yeah, I went a long time, and probably too long, because I started, like, I wouldn't call it professionally, but at least jumping against those guys when I was at 17, and I jumped till I was 34. So, but that's the reason I've had so many operations and stuff like that. But, I don't regret it for a minute.
Jimmy, before you moved over to Cookson, growing up in Moore, tell us, where'd you fish when you were in Moore?
It's amazing, Barry, back when I was a kid, living out on the Oklahoma-Cleveland County line, which they call 89th Street now. That was the country. We lived in a small addition, and 89th Street, from 89th Street south, was just woods and waters and ponds and lakes. And I had in every direction around where I live, north, south, east, west, a pond that I could go fish in. And that's what we did. And then when I was a senior in high school at Moore, my dad bought a resort on Lake Tenkiller, and that allowed me to fish every day. And my dad told me if I didn't quit fishing every day, I was going to grow up and be a bum. And he was right. I'm still a bum, but I sure had a lot of fun at it all these years.
You move over there to Cooks into the Tahlequah area. Well, how did that change as a fisherman? I mean, to go from the experience here in the metro and then go to Cherokee County, how did that shape you as a fisherman?
Well, the one thing it did was it allowed me to fish a big lake as opposed to farm ponds. And you know, my parents and my uncles and my granddad took me to big lakes on vacation, but it was a 1 week a year experience. And now I could go fish those lakes every single day, and I did fish them every day. And one of the reasons that I ended up going to Northeastern State University there in Tahlequah as opposed to Oklahoma University where I'd intended to go was that lake. I mean, that changed totally my choice of colleges, and I fished basically every day when I was in college. I mean, I worked 40 or 50 hours a week, and I carried 16 or 18 hours in every semester, but then I'd go fishing some every day or every night. And those college years is what really formed it, and they had some of the early bass tournaments down there, and I was able to as a high school and college kid get to fish with the very best bass fishermen in the world, and you know, that's a tremendous honor. It's like getting to play, as Scott mentioned here at this banquet today, mentioned getting to play golf with somebody like Jack Nicklaus when he was just a college kid, and when as a high school and college kid to get to fish with the best fishermen in the world was a tremendous learning experience, and it changed my life. And I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to go to OU Law School and become a lawyer as soon as I graduated from OU. And I tell everybody that God saved me from being a lawyer. And he saved the rest of the world, too.
Well, there he is, an Oklahoma treasure. And, Brian, 30 years and your fame hasn't subsided. Do you ever sit and marvel at how the name Brian Bosworth and the Boz and the legend of the Boz is able to stay in the public consciousness?
Well, it wouldn't be if it wasn't for the great state of Oklahoma. I mean, it's synonymous to who I am, and being born here and bred here and brought back here during the summer times and learn what to be in Oklahoma is really all about, is really the essence of Brian Bosworth. So I'm just honored that I got to be, in an opportunity to play for a university that I love, for a coach that I got to play for that I love so much, with teammates that we were so successful at doing. And then 30 years later, be an impact and inspiration, not because of my accomplishments so much for what did in the past, but what God is doing in my life right now, and inspire those young people that are going through this journey, the same journey I went on. To me, that's what really is an Oklahoma's responsibility.
Of course, people in my generation, we know all about Brian Bosworth, but the kids of today, the 14-year-olds and the 18-year-olds, are you able to resonate with them? I mean, how is Brian Bosworth able to connect with that crowd?
Well, if I can get them past the haircut, and they can dig down and do a little research, if their parents have to be involved in this process too, because there's a transition, there's a communication, there's a transparency, truth, and honesty that has to occur in creating that relationship, and that's probably one of the hardest things that parents in the X generation, my generation, are dealing with the millennial generation. There's this bridge that doesn't exist, and it has to be built. And it seems like the parents are waiting for the kids to build the bridge, and that's not going to happen. The parents have to build that bridge. So if we want to impact their lives positively and give them something to look back on, not so much what can I do for you now campaign, because that's what the kids now are looking for, is where did I come from and where am I going to go? What information can you give me that's important that I need to know to go forward in my life? And I think that would help, break down some of the barriers for some of the kids that are out there trying to figure out, how do I fit in? And there's so many of the kids out there, I just don't fit in, and I had a lot of questions in my life. That relationship, that communication has to come from their parents.
Of course, last year, going to the College Football Hall of Fame. This year, the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, the 30 for 30 with ESPN. Are all these recognitions, are they helping you spread your new message of transformation?
Well, I don't know so much if it's helping. I think, it certainly doesn't hurt that the dam is broken in 2015. It wasn't by design. It just, again, his timing. Things happen for a reason the way He wants them to happen. I'm honored to be able to speak when somebody asks me about where I'm at in my faith or my journey, because I know there's a lot of people on the same island. They just don't know that they're alone, but they have to have the courage to ask the question. They got to look at themselves in the mirror and find out where they're at. And in order to do that, you have to have somebody who's got the courage to speak loud enough and clear enough about the exact place where He is, specifically me, on my journey. So if that's where I'm supposed to be right now, I'm just following His instructions.
Well, thanks, Brian. Brian Bosworth, the newest member of the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame.